today's video, we're going to be talking about the basics and how to use a camera. Now, I have the Nikon D3300. Not every camera is the same, but the basics, all the cameras are the same, but there might be a different way of changing your aperture or changing your shutter speed than how my camera does it, but every camera should have these settings. So first we're going to start with the basics of our base. So this is not including the lens, this is just the base. We are talking about the base of the camera right now. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is aperture. I've already done a whole video on aperture, so I will leave that in the description below to go check out that video because I explain super into depth what aperture is. Aperture is the amount of light that is let into your camera. I will show some pictures up here, but basically the lower number your aperture, the wider your aperture is, and it lets in more light, therefore giving you a blurry background, which in most cases you want. If your aperture is a higher number, your aperture is going to be smaller, your hole is going to be smaller, and your hole is going to be smaller and more of your background will be in focus because less light is coming into your camera. So the more light, the more blurry your background is. The less light, the more it's in focus. And also with smaller numbers, like if you have an f2.8, that's going to give you a blurrier background because 2 is not a high number. If you have an f22, then that's going to be, everything is just going to be in focus and your background is not going to be blurry at all. So again, the smaller the number, the larger the hole is, more light, blurry background. Now, with changing these settings, it is also going to affect your shutter speed and your ISO. Shutter speed is the length of time that light is being brought into your camera. So I will leave another diagram up above. So shutter speed is measured in 1 over blank. So whatever your number is. And the lower your number is, the more your picture is going to be blurry. So if you're taking a picture of a car driving by, you don't want to have a shutter speed of 1 over 2 because you're not going to get that car. It's going to be just a big blur. If you want to get it in motion, you can do 1 over 500, 1 over 1,000 to make sure that you can get that image. The higher your shutter speed is, your object will be more in focus. Another thing that changing your aperture and your shutter speed is going to affect is your ISO. Your ISO is the sensitivity to the light that is coming into your camera. So changing your aperture and letting in more light is going to affect your ISO, and same with your shutter speed. So your ISO is a sensitivity to the light. So if your ISO is a higher number, it is going to be more grainy. If you have a lower ISO, it's going to be less grainy. And lots of times when you have a darker, if you're in a darker setting at night, you have to boost up your ISO to a higher number in order to get a fast enough shutter speed to get that object in motion, but you end up with a little bit more of a grainy picture. So I have a chart right here and this shows it perfectly. So if you are in a lighter setting, you can use a lower ISO and is less grainy and it's more ideal. The darker you get, so like at nighttime or if you're in a dark room or whatever, you're gonna need a faster ISO because you're going to be needing a faster shutter speed and that's going to also affect your light. So you have to tie in your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO all together. So sometimes, you have to turn up your ISO in order to get a fast enough shutter speed and enough light into your camera. Now, let's talk about flash. So I don't really like to use flash. For the pictures that I like to get, the flash isn't really what I normally go for. There has been times where I've needed to use a flash. If you want to use a flash, you're more than welcome. It's not always the look that I'm going for, but flash does definitely help in darker settings. The flash gives you more harsh shadows and more harsh lighting on the face, and it's not always the most flattering. And that's why I don't really use flash that often. So now we're going to talk about how to change these settings on your camera. So I have my camera right here. Like I said, I have the Nikon D3300. So we're going to show you guys. You can see my phone and everything. So this is the back of it. And then this is the top. This is where you're going to be controlling most of your settings. Like I said, your camera might be a little bit different, but odds are if you watch this and kind of see how my camera works, your camera will be similar. So I'm just gonna flick it on. To change your aperture, so what I normally have to do is I have to press, let it focus, press this little plus and minus button. I hope that's focusing. I have to press this little plus and minus button along with the spinny tool. So what I do is I just press and then I spin. I'm gonna kind of show you guys on the thing. So it's a little bright, but as you can see, this is my aperture. It's at 1.8 right now. Yep, there we go, f1.8. So I'm going to press the little plus and minus, and I'm going to change the little spinny thing, and my aperture is changing. Now that is how I change aperture. It can go all the way, just like that. Now for shutter speed, this is a little more simple. All you have to do is just turn. This is my shutter speed over here. You guys can see. It's 1 over, what is that, 1.6? Yes, okay. So we're doing 1.3. I had it really low. Normally I keep it up, and it can go all the way to 4,000, just like that. And all you have to do is just do the spinny thing. You may, depending on your camera, you may have to press a button to change it, but normally you can just move the spinner thing. The next thing is the ISO. Now, this is a little bit different. I'm gonna try and do it backwards, okay? So I have to normally press this little I button. And then I just, normally you can scroll over, but it always lands on it. Press OK. And you can change your ISO like that. You have 100, 200, 400, what is that, 800, all that. You can just pick your numbers. Normally, this is my sweet spot. As you can see, it's kind of more for action shots. And that's 6,400. That is normally my sweet spot with that. So now I'm going to be showing you guys the settings on my camera and kind of just doing a little tutorial on my camera. So like I said, up here we have the on button, we have the record button, info button, and then to change your aperture we have all the settings up here: manual, automatic, or no, sorry, that's not automatic, manual, and then that's the aperture priority auto. Yep, that's what it's called. Then we have the shutter priority auto. Then we have programmed auto. Then you have your guide, you have automatic. Then you have all these little settings. I wish it would like focus better. Okay. You have all these different settings: portrait mode, speed mode, or like motion mode, all these different little settings, and effects. I never really go on that. I normally leave mine at manual all the time. Now for over here, we have, this is how you get back to your pictures, but I don't have a memory card in right now. You have menu to change your settings. You have the, which I actually use this a lot, and this is the plus and minus to zoom in on pictures after you take them. Over here we have this button, which I don't have a memory card, but this is how you can take a picture from looking at the screen. Like, I don't know if you can tell. You can like take a picture looking at that, but I suggest always using your viewfinder. Your viewfinder's here. Then we just have the mover button and the trash can to delete. Right, my dogs needed attention for a second. Okay, then this is to do the continuous shots. Now, I have it on continuous. You can do a single frame. You can do a quiet shutter release, which I've never done before. You can do a self timer, things like that. But I always have it on continuous so I can shoot multiple in seconds. Then down here, you have all your little settings. If you press the I, you can go in and change them. You have your ISO, you have your white balance, which I always leave it on auto. You have your metering, which I always have it on matrix metering. I don't really know, to be honest, I don't really know what that means. You have your centered and your spot metering. Then you have your flash compensation. I never really used that. Then you have your exposure compensation, which I sometimes mess around with this, is you can, mine's at 0, but you can kind of turn up the settings. See how that image is getting brighter? You can kind of already like add brightness to your pictures, but I don't always like to mess with that. Then you have your autofocus area mode. You can do a single point. You can do the auto area, and that's what I normally do. You can do the 3D. So I kind of like to do the auto focusing. So then we go on to the lens. We just have the automatic and manual. I leave it on automatic so it auto focuses for you. You have your flash button right here. And that is really it. Those are all the settings on my camera that I really use or that I know about. Like I said in previous videos, make sure you check your manual, get to know your camera, and your photos will turn out amazing. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something, and I will see you guys in the next video.